Everybody happy in the comments? Like, here we go. Like, that's Buffalo plus, baby, not Buffalo negative. We're saying both sides. That's how this is.
Yeah.
And there's the open.
This is the Buffalo Plus Podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.
All right, welcome back to the Buffalo Plus Podcast, presented by Connors and Ferris. Mike Catalana with the day off. Dan Fates here. I am Jenna Cottrell. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We always appreciate it. Today is Saturday. The NFL draft is officially over. Brandon Beane talking to the media. The Bills making a whole bunch of picks, Dan. And I want to start with just your overall impression of what the Bills did in the 2025 draft.
Yeah, I'm glad that Mike's getting some time to rest. I will admit, Jenna, I don't know about you, I'm not firing at 100%. Like that, I think that's been well documented, maybe by our last video that was posted that we did at 2 a.m. But we're gutting it out, okay? And my first impression is I thought the Bills would be heavy on defense. I didn't think it'd be this heavy. I didn't think they'd spend this much capital. I think they needed to. Like, I think they needed to improve there. But if you would have told me beforehand, like, how many picks do you think are defensive? How many do you think are offensive? I probably would have said, I thought maybe almost 50-50, maybe 60-40. Mm-hmm. But obviously there was a big improvement to add to the defensive line, which we can get to. I also want to get to it for all the people that like, comment, and subscribe. We saw the comments. I was in the trenches. I loved one of the comments that I responded to, calling me somewhat of an idiot or calling this Buffalo negative. And then I responded and said, I was just trying to do our job. It's what our thing is. And the person's like, I've been a subscriber since you guys had 50 subscribers. I didn't know you read the comments. We do. I read your comments. So shout out to that. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised by just the volume of defensive picks, Jenna.
No, I think that's very fair, especially because, all right, they go corner to begin with. They go D-line with the interior guy. Then they go edge. Then they go back out to defensive line. They do a couple more corners. Like, I think that these players are, I don't want to say I'm surprised there's so much defense, because going into the draft, we had heard so much about how much depth there was specifically on the defensive line. But I just look at, they get a blocking tight end, they get a tackle, and they get, with their last pick in the 7th round, a big-bodied wide receiver. And I was just hoping earlier on they would go for the receiver. Now, Beane said in his post, I was about to say game press conference, but like his press conference after, like, we went with best player available. And I understand the approach of not, or trying to get as much value as you can for your picks. But I just think of the Bills receiving room right now, and I wanted more offensive talent. I just wanted a little more sizzle instead of a whole bunch of steak.
Yeah. And I think somebody tweeted at you, Jenna, and obviously we're not in Buffalo for this press conference. As you can see, we're both in our home studios. Somebody wanted us to ask Beane why he hates wide receivers. I thought that was a really funny.
It was I laughed out loud. It was really good.
Yeah. So again, we are not going to be Buffalo negative today. We are going to call it as we see it. I always like to say I call a circle, a square, and how we go about this. But I kind of we wanted to do a Bills post-draft recap, kind of give our thoughts. We will not be giving grades because post-draft grades are really dumb. Because we still don't have the grade out for last year's draft class. We still don't know what Keon Coleman is, or Cole Bishop, or Dwayne Carter.
Yeah.
But to start there, I think, Jenna, I do want to touch the D-line just real quickly. We always say, don't just listen to their words, like kind of listen and follow the money. And in this case, it's capital of the draft. I don't know where Dwayne Carter is going to enter week 1 in the depth chart, because they added a ton of defensive line in this draft, which is, I think, something that fans and subscribers here would want. So that's something I want to get to. Jenna, I do want to, especially early on here, before people, start to click off the video because we're so negative. I want to talk more about Max Hairston.
Yeah,
I do. Before we get to my thoughts on Max Hairston, a lot of people commented in saying how much they loved Matt Bove and the Always Game Day podcast is great and that all of these things. And Matt Bove made some comments in that video. I grabbed him in the hallway/prison that people thought I was in. Okay. Well, Matt also has something else he wants to say to amend his comments. Here's Matt Bove.
Hello. It's hard to make this video, but sometimes we need to accept when we make mistakes. That is something I did the other day in this very hallway at One Bills Drive. I walked behind Dan Fates, minding my business, and he asked me about Max Hairston. And I said, hey, I like the pick. Brandon Beane does a lot of research. I think that he probably knows more about football than I do. That was a dumb thing to say. I shouldn't have said that. And I'm sorry for saying that. But we all make mistakes. Like when Dan Fade said that Marquez Valdez-Scantling was going to lead the Bills in receiving yards last season. I think he made it to week 5. It's okay to make mistakes. You just need to address them when they happen. I am sorry for my actions. I will be better. And please listen to It's Always Game Day in Buffalo, my favorite Buffalo Bills podcast.
Phenomenal by Bove. That video. So I had kind of messaged Bove on the side and said like, hey, I don't think that comment is really fair. Like just because, and it's people that also comment in to us saying, you know, NFL GM, like they'll criticize a pick and be like, you got to play the game. Like Brandon Beane never played football. He didn't play it in college. 90% of NFL GMs didn't play. Doesn't mean you can't evaluate. And it doesn't mean, in our opinion, you can't be critical of some of the picks, especially with Brandon Beane. His history in the first round recently hasn't been great. So to just have blind faith, I'm not trying to take away optimism from Max Hairston. It's not what I'm trying to do. And I won't do it. I promise. But I thought it was kind of, you know, busting Bove's balls of like, that was kind of a wild comment. And he's like, you're right. Hands up. That's on me. And Jenna's like, well, that's a private text message. I said, Bove, I think you need to issue a formal apology on Buffalo Plus. So, and then there's the perfect jab, like to bring up NVS. I'd forgotten about NVS. Beautiful job by Matt.
I haven't.
Beautiful job by Bove.
People
He's
don't
the best.
forget, Dan. No, yes, Bove's video was very good. He did say he did it in one take too, which is very impressive. So why don't we hear more on your thoughts on Max Hairston? Because, you know, I think sometimes it's hard because you immediately give your instant reaction. And sometimes when you think about things more, just in your life in general, overall, for everyone, you're like, oh, you know what? This is how I feel now. And maybe how you feel, you know, 72 hours later is a lot different than how you felt day one.
Yeah. And I remember doing that with the Dalton Kincaid video. I remember my instant reaction of the Dalton Kincaid was like, hated it. Doesn't make sense, all of this stuff. And I ended up making a video the following morning. And I was like, I can see it now a little more. Maybe I was right the first time with my instant reaction.
I was like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Let me say this. And I know, and listen, we do watch, listen, hear, are aware of all the other great Bills podcasts and channels and commentators that are out there and content creators. They're great. It doesn't mean that like everybody has to follow along and other ones do different things. We always say there's more than one piece of the pie. And it's great that the Bills have this network. And again, appreciate everybody here that has liked, comment, and subscribed. Mm-hmm. But all I was trying to do in that moment and still trying to do is to explain there is no perfect prospect. Each prospect has strengths and weaknesses. I thought we did a pretty good job. I don't think it must not have come across that way of highlighting the strength of the speed, the playmaking abilities, the instincts, the personality that is Max Hairston. It's electric. Like his play literally on the field is electric, and so is his personality. He has weaknesses. And I'm not saying the kid's not going to be good because I'm addressing that there are some out there. And you watch some of his tape, and I have, and some of it's really good, and some of it's not. And the tackling, a lot of people talked about, well, he had a shoulder injury and all of those things. That's part of the size concern. Beane even talked about that in his press conference. That wasn't me saying, I think he's going to get big boyed in the league. Beane said, you watch some things, you're going to see him get big boyed. He may get big boyed in the NFL. Like, that's okay. That doesn't mean that he can't cover and all these things. I've actually thought about it more. I like the fact that he was mainly a zone corner. That's what the Bills do, right? He played about 85% at Kentucky last year in zone coverage, but he's got instincts like a kind of like a Trey White. He's the smallest outside corner the Bills have drafted in the McBean era. Like, for everybody says, oh, he's the same size as Trey White. Like, Trey White pretty much played at 190. We haven't seen Hairston play at 190. And what you are in April is going to be different than what you are week 15. It's just the wear and tear of an NFL season, which is where there are concerns about his size. And not everybody's built the same. Like, frame is an issue. And can you put on the weight? Can you add the muscle? Dalton Kincaid's a prime example of that. Needs to get stronger. He's 2 years into his NFL career, and the Bills are making that a big point of emphasis. So can he hold up to the rigor? And can you play when you're not 100%? And you got a bum shoulder. Can you still make the tackles? What do we always hear? Deone talks about it. Injuries in the NFL are 300%. Like, they're going to happen. So can his body hold up to the rigor? We don't know. All I was trying to do is point out, I think he's electric in coverage. I love the ability that he has to make up plays. He had an interception against Missouri this year that was just phenomenal. Dropping back in coverage, letting his wide receiver go through and drifting off and making a play. Like, that's a play you see on Sundays from elite level corners. So I just wanted to point all those things out. And I was even talking to Eric Turner of Cover One, and he did a breakdown because they do good stuff. Like, they crunch way more film than we do. That's their lane. That's not ours. Ours is much more shoot from the hip, personality kind of stuff. But he even said he thought he was a second round, early third round pick. And he even thought he was surprised by the fact that the Bills took him because he didn't think it was, quote unquote, their guy. We're just people talking. I hope Maxwell Hairston is an all-pro. I hope he immediately comes in and is that CB2. It's okay to be a smaller corner. Let's not try and act like he's bigger than others. Can he bring that physicality? The technique can be coached. It's a matter of, can you make the plays when it counts? So again, all I was trying to do, and all we were trying to do, Jenna, you included, like, strengths and weaknesses. This is the player profile. That's it.
I feel like that was like 12 minutes.
It was about that.
I feel like you've been waiting to get that off your chest for a couple days now.
All Friday morning, I just spent in the comments. As many of you are watching this.
Oh my gosh. Here's the thing that I look at. Did I expect the Bills to draft him? No. That's terrifying. Don't take the. What do you? Okay.
I don't know what I just did.
I don't know what Dan just did either, but when I look at the upside, when I look at the traits, it makes a ton of sense. Now, when I look at the weaknesses, that's why I was concerned with the smaller frame, with the tackling, with the liability in certain situations. But when you see the speed, when you see the ball skills, when you see the instincts, it makes a ton of sense. This is a big swing. Personality, 10 out of 10. I think he will be a great DNA fit in that locker room. I think he wants to learn. He has the right mindset about it. He said he likes to be coached hard, which I think is a positive, especially for a rookie. I like that mindset. I think that's important to have because not every player likes to be coached hard. And I think sometimes if you want to get the best out of yourself, you have to want to be coached hard. But I see why they took that swing. And it is interesting that Trey Amos went and fell as far as he did because we thought the Bills could take him at 30th overall. But I think Buffalo went with a guy that has a very high possible ceiling. He's aggressive. Like Dan says, he can be electric. What will the floor be? We do not know. But they're going for upside, and that is why Hairston makes sense. And then also they have added other corners as well.
They double dipped at corner.
I mean, yeah. And then so Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State, Dorian Strong. Now people were talking about Hancock possibly moving to safety and what that could look like in the future. But still, you're right. Like they've obviously invested multiple picks in the secondary and trying to figure out what that will look like down the line.
And that's the other thing too, is I think people automatically assume or they are, because of the coaching hires and some of the things the Bills try at the end of the season, that like the Bills are going to play more man. And that may be true, but they're not going to play 40% man coverage. Like Sean McDermott can adapt. He's not going to change now. So he's where people are like, oh, he's going to play so much zone. It's like, or he's going to play so much man. Now he can play, because he has speed, he can play man. Like that doesn't automatically equal that. Like those things are kind of
the option. It gives you the option, and that's why it's important.
Well, it gives you the option because he didn't play it a bunch. So you're hoping the traits fit playing man, because he's played off a lot, which is good for to have his speed and zone coverage. He can wait longer. He has, I was writing it down, like really nice feet. Like he can break on routes. Like I don't know. It's just, there are things I clearly like about it, doing a little bit more, because as I said on the video 2 weeks ago, I crossed him off my list. I was like, this guy ain't going to come to Buffalo. So like, I had only kind of looked at what I saw as not this guy. So I'm not really looking into him so much. So that was where it was. So again, saw the comments about Debbie Downer.
One more thing. I think he is not the prototypical guy for the Bills in that spot. And maybe because of what happened with Khair or whatever, maybe they're deciding to go, all right, we're going to do things a little bit different because it didn't work out in that first round before. So maybe let's take a different approach. Obviously it hit with Christian Benford, but we'll see, but I think he has the right tools and the right abilities. It's just being able to make sure he can be out on the field. But I get why they did it, because of the potential ceiling that a guy like that could have.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again,
all right. Let's talk.
Everybody happy? Everybody happy in the comments? Like, here we go. Like that's Buffalo plus, baby, not Buffalo negative. We're saying both sides. That's how this is.
Yeah.
And there's the open.
So let's talk. So we're going to talk mostly about the first 3 picks by the Bills, just because I think that's obviously the first 2 days are kind of the meat and potatoes. But let's talk a little bit more about TJ Sanders, defensive tackle out of South Carolina. I know, Dan, he's a guy that you really like.
Yeah, he's my favorite pick of the draft. On one of the other videos we did, like there was a big push that everybody's like, you need a one tech defensive tackle. And there was the thought of maybe they get one of those guys at 30. And I was like, hey, don't get so caught up with the technique. And you want that defensive tackle alongside Ed Oliver to be impactful. Don't think about so much about, pigeonholing yourself into one type of guy. Find a guy that makes the impact. And I think TJ Sanders, who is undersized, 6'4", 297, but is versatile, stout. Dang. I almost slipped up over versatile, and then I just tried to power through to stout, and it came up as stout. So
it's okay.
He's a penetrator. He can get up the field. Like he's more of, I guess I kind of looked at him as like a big Ed, because he has that burst and kind of those things. Really strong. Saw some reps from him at the Senior Bowl, running guys over. And this goes back to the point we were kind of talking about with Mike. Like the Eagles do it too. Like what your position is or weight or whatever that is, get 4 defensive linemen that can get after the quarterback and just do that. However they match up, just get 4 dudes that can get after quarterback. First team all SEC is huge to me. This guy is, I'm sure he can get up to around 300. I think he could be a 3-down defensive lineman. And that's something in an impactful player. I like what I've seen and the reaction to getting TJ Sanders.
Yeah, I think I like him a lot too. He was in the Bills media room today. He was very sweet. He was getting his mom some food, making sure she was all set. So I loved that. That's after my own heart. But I think what he can bring, and you're right. You talk about he can be a disruptor. You've seen that production in college, what that can look like. And I think it makes a ton of sense. And we have talked about how going into the draft, how it was like, all right, you need corner, you need a D tackle, you need edge. And for the Bills to address those needs right off.
Check.
Oh,
check.
I thought you were we do like to point on this podcast, so I was not sure. I didn't know if Shane was coming around or what was going on.
She's upstairs.
She's upstairs. Okay. All right. You talked about your favorite pick of the draft. My favorite pick was the next guy, Landon Jackson, edge guy out of Arkansas, 6'6", 264. His teammates described him as crazy because of his motor, just the production that he has had. He is a guy that gets after the quarterback. I think he's such a Bills guy. Like, even Brandon Beane talked about how his DNA is a perfect match with the Bills. He was on a Zoom call on Friday and he talked about how he's already married. He's got his dog and football. That is it. Like, no distractions. He just wants to ball out. And I think he's someone that could really early on see playing time. And Brian Baldinger, huge on him. I really trust his instincts about players. He talked about just how good of a guy he is. Great length. Like I said, high motor production. Should see playing time immediately. So that's a very ringing endorsement. Someone who makes a lot of sense, addresses a need, and also addresses a need at a position of need and can show some really nice stuff that I think could really be impactful early on. And you would hope in his rookie season.
Yeah, I wrote down physical freak, and our timelines must be pretty similar, Jenna, because I also saw Baldy's breakdown on it. You talked about the length, the strength, the high motor, and the speed. He's, in the 260s and ran in the 4.6 for the 40. Like, he doesn't have great bend. I know that's another thing they talk about edge, like the guys that can really get below the tackles to get around the outside, but he's got the ability, at least at the college game, to get inside. A lot tougher to do from an edge to get inside in the NFL, but he may have that strength to get there. He's got the juice, relentless, high motor guy. He was a big recruit by LSU out of high school. Like, those are all traits that I can see. And especially in college, like I remember Javon Solomon, like kind of was this speed guy and had the bend, but that was kind of like his move. You look at a guy like Landon, like he's got a lot of moves, at least from the college game. To see how they'll translate, we don't know yet, but I like that he seems to have a bunch of stuff in his tool belt to be able to make moves and adjust along with the physical size. Like I said, he's the same height as Greg, pretty much, which is crazy. That is, you got some length, and I know you can't teach speed. Length is tough to teach also.
First team SEC in 2023, second team SEC in 2024. Last year had 9.5 tackles for a loss. I mean, talk about production. So he's someone that I think could immediately make an impact on the team. Yeah. And I just liked his vibes too. I'm going to be honest. Good vibes. All right. Let's see in terms of other guys we want to talk about.
Day 3 picks. I tweeted before the day what my wish list was, and it was a large human being, it was a wide receiver, and it was special teams help. I didn't have to wait long to get the help to check one of the things off my wish list in Deone Walker out of Kentucky. First thing I wrote was massive human being alert.
6'7", 331 pounds.
Don't knock the half an inch. 6'7.5".
Okay,
353.
Did we round up? We say 6'8"?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Like I'm 5'11.5", 6 foot. Now I'm 6. That's how this works. I saw one person talking about his. No, 5'11".
Oh, I didn't know that.
Not quite 6 foot. Thanks for putting that out there. Now
you were the one that put it out there.
Well, I was just
you round up.
Yeah. The one person talking about his measurables and like the RAS score just said he was, quote, an insanely large human being. And I loved that. Like, I was like, this is it. This is the guy I was talking about. A guy to kind of take up space just by standing there. And last year he wasn't great. And a lot of people talked about, like, do you care? Like, some people were saying, don't pay attention to this season's tape because he had a back injury. Like, my back would be hurting too, I imagine, if I'm 6'8", 350. So, but he's a space eater and he's just a massive human being that I think the Bills have been needing on first down and second down. I like the play of getting some beef, as we kept talking about throughout the season, on the defensive line.
Enormous human, elite size, strength, can overwhelm opponents with physical traits. Firm edge setter when bumped out to 5 technique. Uses length and athleticism to block, to play off blocks and slide laterally.
I loved it when they talked about too, just the fact of, like, just with his physical traits, he overwhelms people just by standing there. He is intimidating.
I mean, it's 6'8", 350.
Yeah.
That's
Jo-
yeah.
And this is where we talk about, like, what does this mean for Dwayne Carter? Because they picked up 2 defensive tackles. They talked about moving him after day 2. It was like, well, Dwayne Carter will be behind Daquan Jones in that rotation for that one tech spot. This guy's also going to be in the rotation. You're obviously going to have TJ Sanders in that rotation.
Yeah.
And we talk about, like, we thought there was a possibility of taking a safety in this draft class. They didn't. That shows you a lot of confidence in Cole Bishop. But then taking 3 defensive linemen isn't necessarily a ringing endorsement for Dwayne Carter, who they just took last year in the 3rd round.
Yeah. Now they did say about Deone Walker, we'll play him all over. That's what Bean said today on Saturday.
Well, he will be all over just by his presence. When he's on the field, he will be all over the field.
But yeah, I mean, listen to or see what their actions do, not just what they say. And obviously,
it was like when we thought about, Spencer Brown, they could draft a right tackle. They didn't. And then by the end of that season, they signed him to an extension because he was just that guy. So
yeah, they believed him. All right. After that, blocking tight end, or no, I'm sorry.
Jordan Hancock. Think Cam Lewis.
Yes.
So,
kind of the Swiss Army knife out of Ohio State.
Played everywhere, played corner, safety, and nickel for the Buckeyes. Carl Jones, who is a big Buckeye fan, said he probably would have been one of their best players on defense if he would have come back. So he's very familiar with his game. Thought the same thing Cam Lewis.
Yeah. Special
Blocking
teams
tight
would be
end.
potential special teams, backup on defense, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Another 5th round, Jackson Hawes.
My thoughts here.
What?
My thoughts here.
Blocking tight end. What's that? No, for people that can't read your mind.
Blocking tight ends. Who's better than the best blocking tight end? The worst
offensive lineman?
Yeah.
Okay.
The worst offensive lineman is better than the best blocking tight end at it. Now I get it. He can also go out in the pass in game. I get that, but what Alec Anderson brought, I'll put money down that Alec Anderson is a better blocker than Jackson Hawes. And that's not a knock at Jackson Hawes. But I understand there's the Reggie Gilliam and all these kind of things like replacing. And I don't know. I was just
like Quentin Morris.
Quentin Morris. Sorry. Yeah. Like it's cool. Blocking tight ends are cool. That one to me kind of screamed special teams.
Wish they drafted a wide receiver there.
Yep.
I just wish.
Why does he hate wide receivers?
I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Men.
But like, I really don't. Like, Josh Allen is a phenomenal player. Literally the MVP of the league. Why don't you want to give him more help?
Because he's proven he can do it without it. And maybe you have more faith in the Curtis Samuel coming back and Josh Palmer. Like you have hopes of what Dalton Kincaid can be.
Hope. Not hope.
You get hope in one hand and hope in one hand and shit in the other and see which one fills up first.
Yeah, I mean, that's my only critique. And like in the 7th round, they picked up a big bodied guy. But I would have, after you had gotten the meat potatoes out of the way, I would have loved for them to really go and add a weapon or someone on in terms of a receiver.
And the other one was they drafted a lineman out of UConn. That's all that we will say. And that's our analysis on that player. And then Dorian.
Why? I mean, I think that's interesting. I mean, we'll see what he can add. Like, I'm actually shocked the Bills made all those picks.
Yes. Dorian Strong, 6'1", 185, a little lean. But to me, that one was a much more McDermott pick for a corner. Yeah. Bigger, not elite, but he's agile. And that was some of the things they talked about, his scores at the combine and things like that. So they took 3 defensive backs, 3 defensive linemen, a tight end, a lineman, and a wide receiver.
Yep. So Kaden Prather out of Maryland. Well,
so
ACC.
Again, how do you grade him? Grade right now.
I give the Bills A
A
B plus.
plus.
No, B plus for Buffalo plus. We did this
Perfect.
with Mike. No, I think overall, again, my one critique is I would have loved for them to add a wide receiver earlier on. Now there's the, the free agent additions that they can do and all that undrafted free agents they'll sign, but
I just had to get some things off my chest. So I'm happy that everybody
yeah,
got to hear a little bit more of the analogy and what goes on in this sometimes cohesive mind.
sometimes cohesive. Stout. You're not stout, but still.
Stop. Stop.
Stout.
Just chill and stop.
Hey, almost got there. All right. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's it. I got to go put my girls to bed.
Okay. May 14th schedule release. So that's the next thing on the NFL calendar.
Yeah.
So we'll go from there. But feel free. Why don't you comment in what your favorite pick was and just your overall thoughts on the draft by the Bills, what you make of it, what you liked, what you didn't, and where do you think this team still needs to add?
Love it.
All right. For Mike Catalana, who is Veteran Day off, Dan Fates, I am Jenna Cottrell. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share. We always appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Buffalo Plus podcast presented by Connors and Ferris.
This is the Buffalo Plus podcast, brought to you by Connors and Ferris.